The second reason why worship is important is because it helps us discover the mysterious, sacred elements of life and approach them with awe. There are good things that our culture teaches us, but one of the negative things our culture teaches us is that all that matters is what you can see and hear and taste and touch. All that matters is the physical, the surface elements of life. Worship teaches us that there's so much more below the surface elements of life. The times of silence, the times of prayer, of reflection, of listening to music and being changed by it, of the ritual that we do. All of these things engage our sixth sense, so to speak. Or I like the way Leonard Sweet talks about it. He says, all of these things engage our Jesus goggles, that we might sense God's presence beneath what we can see and taste and touch and hear. It's beneath the surface of our daily lives. Worship helps reorient us in a relationship with God. Worship helps us see below to the sacred elements of life that are more mysterious. And worship is our way of putting ourselves in the most advantageous place for engaging and being engaged by God's Spirit. Another thing our culture teaches us that's negative and that we have bought into is that we need to live a high-speed, high-tech lifestyle. We think that's the only way we can survive in today's world. And we don't take the opportunity on a regular basis to sit and think and reflect and learn and study. But worship gives us an opportunity to do that. In worship, we arrive for a planned encounter, a scheduled time and a place to connect with God. We're supposed to arrive with our souls prepared, our minds ready, and our hearts open. And anticipation makes worship different from any other times in our life. Worship gives us an opportunity to separate ourselves from the high-tech, high-speed lifestyle that our culture tells us is the only way to live. We reorient ourselves toward God, we get in touch with the mysterious sacred elements of life, and we put ourselves in the most advantageous place for the work of God's Spirit in our lives. Fourthly, I think worship brings us back to ourselves. You may have heard people say, and maybe you've said it yourself, worship centers me, or grounds me, or connects me, or roots me, or anchors me. You may have said those, or you may have heard those things. What that means is worship brings us back to ourselves. Another negative thing that our culture teaches us is that we need to be somebody else. We need to put on a facade. We need to appear around folks in a way that we aren't normal and natural. Worship brings us back to ourselves, and we learn who we truly are. However you say it, worship centers me or grounds me or anchors me, however you say it, it's the opposite of losing touch, of being distracted, of feeling disconnected, and living harried and haphazard lives, which is what our culture encourages us to do. Worship roots us and grounds us in what really matters. With these statements as to why worship is important, because it reorients ourselves, because it helps us look under the surface of life, because it puts us in the more advantageous place to be connected with God. And because it brings us back to ourselves, we somehow could get the notion that worship is about us, right? I don't want to give you that impression. I don't want you to leave with that sense. The purpose of worship doesn't begin and end with what we do. Worship is the means God uses to accomplish God's purposes in our hearts and in the community of God's people. Worship is about God, not us. Worship itself and every element of it is God's means of grace in our lives. It's the way for God to accomplish God's recreation of us. That's why we're here. That's what worship is about. And let me quote Bishop Schnase, the author of the book, 5 Practices for Fruitful Congregations and for Fruitful Living. I like what he says here. He says, in worship, God, the gardener of the soul, clears the weeds, waters the seeds of hope and courage, helps us to blossom in love and flourish into wonderfully fruitful lives. Okay, that's the practice of worship and why it matters. Let me ask you, what are some of the resistances to worship? What are some of the reasons in your life or excuses in your life for why you might not want to worship? Why you might not want to be here to do the things that we just talked about? And I'm going to open it to you. What are the resistances to being a part of worship? More fun things to do. It's inconvenient. Need more sleep. The weather's bad. Okay. The air conditioning at church doesn't work. The air conditioning at church is too cold. We aren't singing from the green hymnal. What are some other reasons? I mean, all of these make us laugh, but this is a serious question.